Okay, in this video we're going to talk about the quadratic formula and how we can use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. And so we have the solutions to ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 can be found using the following formula. Okay, so what we have here is a quadratic equation, right, and it's solved for 0, and there is the quadratic formula. And that's read x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a. And the main thing that you have to make sure is that your quadratic equation says equal to 0. So if you don't have it, if it doesn't say equals to 0, the very first thing you need to do to your quadratic equation is move everything to one side of the equation so that the other side is 0. And once you do that, then it's just identify what a, b, and c are, substitute into the formula, and then solve. So here's the first example. We have x squared plus 5x minus 6 is equal to 0. Now you can see that it does say equals 0. So my a is the coefficient of x squared, which is 1. b is the coefficient of x, which is 5. And c is my constant, which is -6. So then all I need is the quadratic formula. And I'll write the quadratic formula down here in red. X is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and all of it over 2a. And all we're going to do is plug in the values for a, b, and c into that equation. So x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus, big square root sign, b squared minus 4 times a times c. And all of that is over 2a. And now it's just a matter of going through and doing the arithmetic. X would then be -5 plus or minus. Under the square root sign, we're going to have 25. And when you multiply these numbers together, this is going to end up being plus 24. And then this is all going to be over 2. And keep doing the math. Plus or minus. We have to add 25 and 24 gives you 49. And that's still all over 2. Come up there. Square root of 49 we know. So we have -5 plus or minus 7 all over 2. And at this point, we'll talk about what that plus or minus is. Okay, the plus or minus means that I can do two things. And I'll do this one time treating it as a plus. So x is going to be -5 plus 7 over 2. X would be 2 divided by 2, or x would be 1. And then I would do it one time where I would treat that sign as a minus sign. So x would be -5 minus 7 all over 2. X would be -12 divided by 2. And x is -6. So the plus or minus, just that's how we get our potential two answers. We do it one time with a plus sign, one time with a minus sign. So the answer, x is 1 and x is -6. If you think about a quadratic graph, it's going to be a parabola. Okay? What that means is that this parabola will cross the x-axis at +1 and it would cross at -6. And that's why those two numbers are the solutions. That's always where the solution is. Let's do another one. Okay, in this one, notice that your equation does not have equals to 0. So the very first thing you need to do is make it say that. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. We'll get -3x squared plus x plus 5, and that's equal to 0. And that's going to allow me to identify my a, my b, and my c. A is -3, b is 1, c is 5. And so we'll plug into our quadratic formula one more time. X is going to be equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of that is over 2a. And again, do the math. Negative 1 plus or minus. Under here is going to be 1. If you do all that, it's going to be plus 60. Underneath is negative 6. So x is negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 61 all over negative 6. And now we're ready to take this and we do our two possibilities. Okay, x is going to be equal to negative 1 plus the square root of 61, all divided by negative 6. Okay, and then also you'll have negative 1 minus the square root of 61 all over negative 6. Okay, so what I would do is plug all of that into your calculator, negative 1 plus the square root of 61, then hit equals, and then hit divided by negative 6. If you do it correctly, you're going to get that this is negative 1.14, and then your other option, remember, is negative 1 minus the square root of 61, all divided by negative 6. And again, type in negative 1 minus the square root of 61, hit equals, then hit divided by negative 6. If you do that correctly, you're going to get about 1.47 and you round to the nearest hundredth. And so that just means that x is approximately equal to negative 1.14 and 1.47. And again, this particular parabola is going to cross the x-axis at negative 1.14, so a little bit to the left of negative 1, and around 1.5. Positive 1.5. Here's our last one. And now if you look at this last one, it says y equals negative 3x squared plus 4x plus 5. So what we need to do is we'll put 0 in where y is. And now my equation is equal to 0. And basically we're putting 0 where y is. So think about the graph. When y is 0, that's along the x-axis. So what we're doing is we're going to find the x values when y is 0. And that's where the parabola would cross the x-axis, and that would be the solution. So in this case, we have a is equal to negative 3, b is equal to 4, and c is equal to 5. And if we do the quadratic formula here, x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of that's over 2a. So it's going to be negative 4 plus or minus. In here we'll have 16, and it's going to be 60 again, so plus 60, and this will be negative 6 again. So negative 4 plus or minus square root of 76 all over negative 6. Again, remember there are two things then that we have. We have one where we do this with the plus sign. X is going to be negative 4 plus the square root of 76, all divided by negative 6. And if you do this, you do negative 4 plus the square root of 76, hit equals, and then divide by negative 6. And if you do that, you're going to get negative 0.79. And then the second thing, where we do negative 4 minus the square root of 76, and divide that by negative 6. This would be negative 4 minus the square root of 76. It equals, and then divide that by negative 6. And if you do that, you're going to get about 2.12. And so x is approximately equal to negative 0.79, okay, and 2.12. And so this particular quadratic function, this parabola, we cross the x-axis at almost negative 1, a little more than negative 3/4, and then a little bit to the right of 2. So that's how you use the quadratic formula to find your two solutions.